Okay, let's jump right into this deep dive explainer. Today, we are unpacking the highly volatile geopolitical pressures that are literally threatening to choke the Ontario-Michigan waste corridor. And, believe it or not, how cutting-edge smartphone AI is stepping up to solve it. Right now, there's a massive transboundary waste crisis brewing. It is honestly like watching a high-stakes geopolitical thriller collide with a Silicon Valley tech review. We've been tracking current year-to-date headline news trends, reporting on some intense stuff: shifting Washington trade policies, the incoming Trump administration, impending USMCA or CUSMA tariff negotiations, and a very severe infrastructure crunch up in Ontario under Premier Doug Ford. Basically, these forces are fundamentally rewriting the economics of garbage. So, in this studio overview, we're going to explore exactly how deep this cross-border municipal solid waste disposal crisis goes, and how a super advanced tech approach, called the Sentient Bridge, is taking localized chaos and turning it into strict international compliance. Let's get into it.
Real quick, here is our roadmap for today. First, we'll cover the cross-border waste crisis, then tariffs and tipping fees. After that, Ontario's capacity countdown, followed by 905 Wood, the Sentient Bridge. Then we'll look at the Pixel 10 Pro Edge AI and wrap it all up with the circular bioeconomy.
All right, Section 1, the cross-border waste crisis. So, 3.46 million. That is how many tons of municipal solid waste, or MSW, Ontario exports to the United States every single year. To put that massive number into perspective, we're talking about a highly integrated, non-stop logistical pipeline. Imagine thousands of heavy commercial trucks just constantly rolling across the Ambassador Bridge week in and week out solely to manage that volume. For decades now, Ontario has basically used American landfills, specifically the ones right across the border in Michigan, as a giant pressure valve. It handles all that rapid urban growth and waste generation. Shipping it out has just, well, it's always been the path of least resistance. Now, if you really want to grasp the sheer dependency here, check this out. Ontario's municipal solid waste alone accounts for 14.35% of all waste disposed of in Michigan landfills. Let that sink in for a second. Nearly 15% of Michigan's landfill trash comes directly from across the border in Canada. That makes the province the single largest out-of-state contributor to Michigan's waste system, hands down. For the longest time, this was essentially an economic marriage of convenience. Michigan had cheap land and open facilities, and Ontario had the trash. But the political and economic landscape is shifting super fast. And I've got to tell you, the honeymoon is absolutely over.
Which brings us to Section 2, tariffs and tipping fees.
The deeply entrenched economics of this whole corridor are facing a massive shock right now. Historically, Michigan's crazy low 36-cent per ton landfill tipping fee acted like a giant magnet for Canadian trash. Honestly, it was just way cheaper to toss garbage in a truck and export it rather than build out the expensive infrastructure to process it locally in Ontario. But here is the catch. Citing the stark reality that Michigan now holds more landfill waste per capita than any other state in the country, Governor Gretchen Whitmer is proposing a monumental price hike. She wants to bump that fee from 36 cents all the way up to $5 per ton. The goal there is pretty straightforward: curb all that out-of-state dumping and generate some much-needed funding for local environmental cleanups.
But wait, it gets heavier. Beyond those state-level fees, there's an even larger threat looming from Washington. As the USMCA approaches its joint review cycle, we're seeing intense headline news trends about strict trade postures. Failing to seamlessly renew that agreement has sparked intense tariff uncertainties across all supply chains. And guess what? Waste management is definitely not exempt. If non-compliant, unsorted waste shipments fail to meet the super strict rules of origin under the USMCA, they risk getting slammed with a punishing 40% Chapter 4 transshipment penalty. If you do the real-world logistics math, that is a staggering $1,140 surcharge per individual load just across the border. Ouch.
Okay, moving to Section 3, Ontario's capacity countdown.
Up in Ontario, they are facing a very real ticking clock of rapidly escalating regulatory pressures. Think about it. If the Michigan border becomes too expensive to cross, Ontario's domestic safety net is basically zero. By 2026, municipalities are fully exiting industrial, commercial, and institutional waste management. By 2029, the RE Wood mandate completely bans clean wood from landfills entirely. And by 2034, well, current projections show total domestic landfill capacity exhaustion in the province. Literally nowhere to put the trash. Parallel to this local capacity squeeze, the provincial CIR-CIL levy will severely penalize any mixed waste, scheduled to skyrocket to a painful $60 a ton by 2036. Essentially, the province is boxing in waste producers to force innovation.
So the million-dollar question we have to ask ourselves here is how on earth does the logistics industry survive a multi-front trade and regulatory war over garbage? When you're being squeezed by provincial capacity mandates on one side and Washington's USMCA tariff threats on the other, the old-school way of simply throwing everything in a dumpster and driving it south, yeah, that completely collapses. The industry desperately requires an entirely new, deeply technical approach to verification.
Let's look at Section 4, 905 Wood, the sentient bridge.
Enter a completely novel logistics workflow. It's operated by 905 Wood, and they call it the sentient bridge. Rather than hauling all that mixed garbage to a traditional, super messy transfer station, where it just gets piled up, hand-sorted, and heavily taxed, this digital refinery workflow acts as a direct, highly intelligent conduit. It takes densified, mathematically verified wood chips straight from chaotic construction sites and delivers them directly to biohubs. These biohubs cater specifically to the high-purity pyrogenic biocarbon market. It's a total paradigm shift. It's transforming what used to be a massive geopolitical liability into a verified, highly sought-after industrial asset.
Section 5, Pixel 10 Pro Edge AI. Now this is where it gets really sci-fi. This entire ambitious classification process, it's executed right out in the field, starting with a literal smartphone, specifically a Google Pixel 10 Pro with Android 16. That is absolutely the craziest part of the solution. It's happening right there at the muddy construction bin, not inside some billion-dollar sorting facility. Using specialized light art AI stack features, the device performs a quick visual intake of the loaded dumpster. The Edge AI handles the verification of the wood's purity right on the spot, processes the complex compliance data to generate a formal certificate of origin, and wraps up with this pristine digital refinery application workflow, UI/UX output PDF documentation, so any customs border agent or provincial auditor can immediately verify the load.
Honestly, the sheer speed of this tech is what makes it actually viable in the fast-paced logistics world. The Gemma 4 E2B AI model runs the visual classification directly on the device in under 500 milliseconds. That's half a second to completely sort a load. It instantly flags any contamination, like treated or painted wood, that would just ruin a biocarbon batch. By operationalizing this AI, 905 Wood automatically generates a vital 9-point certificate of origin. And you guys, this is the exact piece of paper required to cross the border smoothly under those strict USMCA rules we talked about. It also ensures OREG 347 Schedule 4 compliance locally and even triggers an initial request for quote within their supply chain ecosystem. It's the whole shebang!
Let's ground all of this in some hard financial reality. Because the smartphone AI workflow generates that perfect certificate of origin before the truck driver even turns the engine on, a compliant clean wood export locks in a very low $5 CR-CIL levy and completely dodges that nasty USMCA tariff. Your total cost hovers right around $452. But let's say you fail to sort your waste. Try to ship a non-compliant mixed load across the border without that AI verification, and bam! You get hit with a $60 provincial levy plus that punishing $1,140 Washington USMCA surcharge. Suddenly, the cost for a single load rockets to over $2,600. It's literally the difference between running a profitable logistics business and going entirely bankrupt.
So that advanced UI/UX workflow directly translates to a staggering $1,034 in Circle levy savings on every single 144-yard mothership load. When you multiply that by dozens of trucks moving out every single day, I mean, the economics are just undeniable. This isn't just some neat little technology trick to show off at a tech conference. This smartphone AI is functioning as a literal financial shield for cross-border operations. It's absorbing the impact of international trade wars and domestic capacity crunches simultaneously.
Finally, let's wrap up with Section 6, the circular bioeconomy. By leaning heavily into the Pixel 10 Pro with Android 16 and that cutting-edge AI verification, 905 Wood is successfully redirecting over 60% of their intake entirely away from those Michigan landfills we discussed earlier. The sentient bridge connects that 60% directly to biohubs instead. So it turns what used to be a heavily taxed, politically volatile waste problem into a clean, verified commodity. Solving this micro-level problem of sorting wood at the bin directly addresses the massive macro-level problem of diverting millions of tons of municipal solid waste away from our overburdened international borders. If there's one thing you should really take away from this explainer, it's that combining mobile hardware with smart supply chain logistics is doing way more than just saving on tipping fees. By operationalizing the Google Pixel 10 Pro and the LightArt AI stack right at the source, 905 Wood is actively securing Ontario's industrial leadership in the global circular bioeconomy. They found a highly efficient way to digitize, index, and verify a physical commodity before it ever even moves. It elegantly solves both domestic infrastructure limits and those imposing international trade barriers in under half a second.
Which leaves us with this final thought to ponder regarding the frankly limitless future of environmental logistics. If a regular, everyday smartphone running edge AI out in a muddy construction site can successfully navigate Washington tariffs, outsmart provincial waste levies, and seamlessly redirect millions of tons of material away from Michigan landfills, what other chaotic global supply chain crises can this technology solve next? Thanks so much for joining me on this deep dive explainer, and we will see you next time.